Welcome back to the couch. I'm Dez.
And I'm Jay. Are you ready for some spookiness this Halloween?
Because this is our Sinister review. It's coming up next.
Sinister is a 2012 horror film directed by Scott Derrickson and written by Derrickson and C. Robert Cargill. It stars Ethan Hawke, Juliet Rylance, and James Ransom.
True crime writer Ellison Oswalt hasn't had a bestseller in years and is becoming increasingly desperate for a hit. When he discovers old film footage documenting multiple murders, he moves his family into the house of the latest victims and vows to solve the mystery.
I just thought it'd be fun to do Sinister this Halloween because it's a horror film that I think gets kind of overlooked in the conversation when you talk about horror films, and I think it deserves to be in that conversation. And I'm more of a horror fan than you are.
I'm usually not in the horror film conversation to begin with, so yeah, I'll take your word for it.
But I'm really interested to hear what your point of view is on this, good or bad. I just want to know from a non-horror perspective what you thought about it.
Oh yeah, you'll get it.
All right, so here we go.
Yeah, let's get into it.
Very first opening shot is a family being hung from their backyard tree. It zeroes you in right away to let you know exactly what tone we're going for in this film. Once we get a few seconds of that, we skip right to our main character, played by Ethan Hawke. Because we've already seen this opening with the hanging of the family, this facade of everyday normal life, it doesn't work because you're waiting you're anticipating, okay, what's going to happen right from the get-go. And I think the movie's very effective in setting that up.
Yes, it is very effective in setting that up. The visual of the family being hung is horrifying to see. But the thing that stuck out to me was that there was like no suspect in that frame, in that shot. It was kind of just like they were kind of hanging from like a pulley, and like it looked like a freak accident but you obviously know it's not a freak accident. Our main character is Ellison Oswalt. I believe it's Ellison. We'll call him Mr. Oswald. They're trying to establish themselves in a new environment, him and his family, while he's simultaneously trying to rekindle another hit because he's kind of only famous for one book.
Yeah, he's desperate for another hit book, and his wife is kind of giving him this like, this is it. This is your last chance because I want a normal life after this. Because he's following true crimes, and we learn very quickly his wife is not happy that he keeps moving the family right next to these true crimes. Because every town they move to, everybody hates them. They're the weirdos that move in when a murder happens or whatever. He's feeling the stress because he knows this is it. This is my last chance to be the famous writer that I want to be. So they've moved in this town in Pennsylvania somewhere, I think it was, and we get the classic, trope of the sheriff comes over to pay a visit and doesn't want him there, and you should just leave town and all that stuff.
So is that classic in horror?
There tends to be some kind of voice of warning. I'm thinking right now, Friday the 13th, in the first couple, there's the lanky, stick-like old man that's hanging around. He warns the kids, you don't want to go back up to the camp.
Yeah.
So, and of course, the warning goes unheeded. We have a murdered family in this town and a missing girl. This time, Ethan Hawke and his family, they haven't moved close to the crime scene. He's actually moved his family into the house where these murders happen.
He's trying to reestablish himself as, a successful writer, a book writer and all, but he's also famous enough for the sheriff to know who he is. And hey, you know what? I don't want you bringing this gray cloud to be shed over this town. I still got to live here after you. We're probably going to move out and go to your next town and do the same crap all over again. He's just following every circus to write a book and profit off of it. That's the way the sheriff sees it. It's just like, I don't really want you here. I get that.
Yeah, and he also has a problem with the way Oswald has portrayed law enforcement in his books as well. He doesn't like that.
And I guess I also see Ellison's perspective, and I guess that kind of makes sense too, where he is at in his life. And it's like, hey, I got to make this work. This is like my last hurrah. My marriage might be on the brink if I don't make this work the right way. And if I do make it work the right way, then I can cash out and ride off into the sunset and won't have to worry about traveling to find the next circus over and over again. So there's a lot riding on this if you're Ellison.
One of the first shots in the film, just backing up here for a second, after the hanging of the family, when we're introduced to Ethan Hawke, it's a Steadicam shot going through the house with him. And it's very reminiscent of 1978's Halloween, and it's the first of quite a few things throughout this film that not just technically, but just in tone and the way it's shot and the way this film pays attention to the story is first. The story of this family comes first. The horror element is kind of part of it after. Right. We got this great Steadicam shot following Hawke, and this particular cast and crew, I think, was very much aware of Carpenter's Halloween and very much influenced by it. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about Sinister, is because I think that part of it gets overlooked, and it actually should get a lot more credit than it does in that regard, and how well it's made anyway. Ethan Hawke goes up to the attic and he finds a box with an old reel-to-reel projector and a bunch of tapes. They all have titles that are innuendo on this twisted thing that they really are. So they sound like something wholesome. He's curious what's on these things. There's a video of the family that's been hung, which is the video we saw at the beginning. So he's, fully aware he's moved into their house, but he didn't know that there was video. So his first question is, who shot this?
He neglected to mention this to his wife, that they moved into the house where a murder had happened before.
Yeah, because there's a moment where she flat out asks him if they've moved near a crime scene.
Yeah, he totally misled her.
We get a little bit of the sound design and score that this film uses during the opening scene, but this is when we really get to hear what this film has to offer. And it's one of the most unique scores and sound design I've ever heard. It's just something really unsettling and not right about the music. He's watching this video and we got this really kind of terrifying, like under the skin, creepy music playing. Maybe it would have been more effective to not have the opener where you see the family hanging from the tree, so that you can be just as shocked as Oswald is when he sees that there's a video. Once you see it, it's like, well, now you can't unsee it.
You can't unsee it, exactly. So I guess it doesn't matter. But yeah, it's a valid point to bring up. Maybe it'll work better if you hadn't done that and just kind of just told the story and let it happen organically. We're kind of slightly different in that analysis. Like I kind of like it when they show a little bit of the end in the beginning and we just kind of have to backwards engineer how we got to that. I kind of like that, and you seem to not care for it. You just show me the story. That's fine. But I think why this works is it's really just a visual to put a psychological nugget in your head.
It doesn't give away anything about the story, but it's only concerned about setting up tone. This movie really focuses first on the story of this family and him trying to unravel, do we have a serial killer going on here? What's happening? There's a true crime mystery going on for the viewer.
You had mentioned about the score. There's just unsettling tones and something's not right. That is my favorite part about this movie as a whole, is the way that it was made. Not so much the story. I'll be honest with you, full disclosure, I didn't care for the story much at all. But the way that this film was made is something that I really appreciated. Even though it didn't necessarily have the desired effect for me, I can see what you were going for. There was also scenes in there where some of the gory, more gruesome murders that Ellison was watching on those reel-to-reels, some of those were shot through the reflection of his eyeglass lens. It's something that jumped out at me. I was like, hey, I like the way, that's a real creative way to shoot that. You know what I mean? It kind of just gives it this extra layer. You're seeing it through his eyes and how he's taking in what he's seeing. And I think that's more powerful than actually just putting it up there and showing it.
That's another big reason I think this film is very Halloween influenced, because it doesn't show you much. It leaves a lot to your imagination, and that makes it more terrifying. While he's watching the reel-to-reel, his first question is who shot these, but his next question is where's the missing daughter, because she's not in the video either. His hope was, maybe there'll be a clue about what happened to the young girl.
It's a great foreshadowing in that moment, because if you can answer one of those questions, you can answer both of them, as we later find out.
It's different eras, different families from different eras, and they've all been murdered and filmed. The music, I just have to mention it one more time because it really does this amazing transition where we're showing the family fishing and they're camping and whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's got this really light, uplifting music, and you almost forget you're in the movie you're in for a little bit. And then it switches real quick. And it's almost not music, it's kind of the use of effects and noise mixed with some kind of melody. It's very hard to explain, but it is especially effective, and I liked the contrast just within this one scene.
Throughout the course of Ellison checking out these reel-to-reel films, he's starting to piece it together the way that he did in his other books. Each one of these murders, they all got the same thing in common. There's one family member missing. So he's starting to subtly put this thing together, and he's getting to the point to where he's thinking about calling the police. He even actually picked up the phone and made the phone call, and then when he finally got patched through, he kind of just, nah. He kind of chickens out. And then there's also a moment where he's this close to telling his wife about what he thinks he's discovered, but either it's his greed overrid him. It's like, hey, you know what? I can figure this out on my own. I don't need to get her involved, that kind of thing. Or maybe he just doesn't want to freak her out anymore because she's already freaked out, because at this point, the son's sleepwalking to an extent that he never was before. The family's already been uprooted. I don't need to add any more extra turmoil on top of what I've already created.
He just continues on his own, and the more of these videos he watches, he starts to notice more patterns. There's a symbol that keeps appearing in each video, and now he's even noticed a figure. And so as he goes to inspect the projection a little closer, the film burns up. And this is key because that's what triggers him to go, you know what, I need to make digital copies of all these reel-to-reels. But this ends up being a really bad thing, because if you see the image or you have possession of the image, it actually can possess you or your family. We learned there's a deity called Bagul.
Mr. Boogie.
Family hanging out. Pool party. Barbecue. Sleepy time.
Oswald ends up working with the deputy sheriff, who's actually a fan of his, so he's kind of going behind the sheriff's back and helping out Oswald with his research. The two of them put their resources together, and so now he has access to a professor, a specialist in the occult.
It's a symbol associated with the worship of a pagan deity.
What kind of deity?
A very obscure one, dating back to Babylonian times, named Bagul, the eater of children. The crimes that you're dealing with, they all have the element of a missing child, correct?
Yes, yeah. It's correct.
Ethan Hawke, in my opinion, his acting was pretty damn good. I believed him. Like, even when he was kind of exploring the house, going to the attic, when he heard like little bumps in the night, he really looked terrified.
It's a very small cast, but everyone's really good in it. But he elevates it a lot.
He's carrying the majority of the film. It's on Ethan's shoulders, and he pulls it off.
It's a really great blending of genres. You have the ghost story haunted element, which is not in it as much as I remembered. It's definitely got more of a true crime thriller feel to it. And then if you're into slashers, it's got that mystery, like serial killer, we may have a slasher killer on our hands element to it. You've got the found footage element. If you like found footage, you've got it. But it's not enough to completely take over the film to where I'd call this a found footage horror film.
There's a moment where he turns away for a second, he's not paying attention to the image, and the image kind of looks directly at him for a split second and then kind of turns back to the image that it was. He totally missed it, but his character knows that something was off. I mean, it didn't really like creep me out or anything, but it was just, there's something about it. I appreciated it from a filmmaking perspective.
Not too much longer, we get another one of these moments actually where he's holding up, it was a still shot of Boogie, and he's kind of holding it up to the window.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if it's the design of Boogie. I don't know if it's just timing on Ethan Hawke's part or just on the edit. Maybe it's all of that combined.
It's probably a combination of all those things.
It's something that's been done a million times.
And they just kind of just did it better. Ellison, whenever he's taking a look at any kind of footage doing research for the book, it's always at night when the rest of the family is asleep. He's always in the attic where it's typically dark and it's kind of in the shadows.
The bumps in the night wouldn't be bumps in the night if
there wasn't a night, right?
In the night, yeah. It's another example of how this film is very much inspired by Halloween 78, because there's a lot going on with contrast and shadow in that film. And there's the very famous shot of Michael Myers just appearing slowly out of the shadow in the doorway. There's so much black going on the screen that you're always looking to see, did I miss something? Is there something in the corner there? It's a very Carpenter-esque thing to do. Things have kind of come to a head with the family and things, the kids aren't acting right, and so Oswald and his wife get into a big heated argument about their situation.
The previous owners of this home were hung from a tree in our backyard.
Yes.
Do you understand what you've done this time? The kind of jeopardy you've put your children in? Your marriage?
Yes, I do! I
Anything you
understand!
won't do for your book? Your daughter.
My daughter has a father who loves her, who is always around, who encourages her to be herself. All right, the worst thing that has ever happened to her is one time she moved into a house where a family was killed. She found out about the murders, all right? So she felt sorry for the little girl, so she painted a picture.
This to me was probably my favorite part of the entire film. There is a very compelling yet contrasting point of view from each character. It was very well acted. It's just the point of views are both valid on both sides. You get where his wife is coming from. Makes perfect sense. Look at how the kids are acting. Basically, everyone's stressed.
You feel like this is a real family, so when the supernatural, otherworldly stuff happens, it's that much more jarring, and you can relate that much more to being in this family's shoes.
You can see this naturally coming to a head. You can see it coming a mile away, and if you don't have that moment, then it just cheapens the experience.
Oswald goes up to the attic again, and this time, though, he actually sees a manifestation of the entities in the house, the missing child from each family. We get a jump scare, and there aren't very many in this film, which I appreciate. That framing of he's in the back, now your attention's brought to the front, just very well executed from a filmmaking perspective.
This is his breaking point. It's finally, you know what, enough. We got a GTFO. It's time to bounce. So he takes the all the reels and the projector and dumps them in like the fire pit.
We have to leave here.
What's the matter? What's happened?
You were right. I made a mistake. We should have never come to this house. We have to leave now.
Oh, you're freaking me out here.
Get the kids, pack the car. We have to leave. Go!
I found this to be really refreshing because how many horror movies are there where you've got a haunting or whatever, and at a certain point you're like, leave. Why don't you just get in the car and leave? Why are you staying? And this film does such a great job at pacing it. I never thought, why don't you leave the house now? Until he actually thinks it's time to leave. So they time it just perfect, and the family does exactly what you would want them to do.
A lot of this was like the audience would see the full scope. Ethan Hawke's character would only see a certain percentage of it. And at this point in the film, he finally sees the whole scope, and he does just like you would want. So from a filmmaking perspective, I really appreciate how that was done.
So they've moved back home. They're moving their stuff back into the house. Oswald goes up to his attic, and lo and behold, there's a box, and it's got the projector, and the reels that he burned are all intact, and we have a problem.
Right. Unfortunately, Ethan Hawke doesn't know this, but it's not the house that's the problem, it's you. It's too late. It's been too late for quite some time. Deputy so-and-so has been calling him, and he's just been ignoring the call because he just wants to put this thing in the past. You know what, I'm putting it to bed. I'm not doing the book. I don't want to relive any of this crap anymore. It was a horrible experience. I don't even want to talk to this guy anymore because he was part of that past life that I just escaped. And later on in the middle of the night, he finally answers the Deputy so-and-so's phone call, and he's ultimately explaining, you're not going to make it.
There's a succession of houses, of family moving into a house, and that family's murdered, and then the moves into the next, someone moves into that house.
And by moving, you became a part of that.
After the events of this film are over, this is just going to keep going. It's not a story about evil, now we're going to conquer the evil and be able to move on with our lives. That's not what we're telling here at all. There's been an addition to the reels, though, in the box where they've got extended bonus features, I guess. There's extended endings. So he starts putting them together. When he watches them, that's when he realizes the key thing. He or she is possessed by Bagul.
And the question that he asked in the beginning of the film, who's filming and where's the missing kid? It's the same answer.
While Oswald is watching these videos, he's drinking his whiskey. There's some kind of sedative or something in it. And his daughter, possessed by Bagul, has knocked him out. He comes to, and she axes the entire family. They don't show it, though, which is great.
They ended it with the daughter drawing pictures of what the severed, what she did to the rest of the family.
It matches the drawings of the other kids.
Right, exactly. And that's a great way to do it without actually having to show her cut her daddy's head off.
You don't know until you see that drawing, oh yeah, she got the whole family.
And then it ends with her, with Boogie whisking her away, and now she's a part of the missing kid family, I guess.
Right before he picks her up, the children are actually watching her do the deed from up on the projected picture. They're all relishing in what they're doing. They're still scared of him when he shows up. I just thought that was pretty creepy and pretty telling.
Admittedly, I'm not the biggest fan of the horror genre, so this film in particular definitely had an uphill battle winning me over. And in some ways I think it did, in other ways it didn't. I really thought the acting, the score, the use of camera angles, the pacing and all that was top notch. All that stuff was great. I like the idea of attempting to explain the inexplicable, but when the inexplicable is explained primarily with the use of the supernatural, it just kind of loses me, and that's just a personal preference for me. I just don't get into that kind of stuff. It's just dead. This is a good movie. It's not necessarily my cup of tea. So overall, I think I'm gonna give this film 2.5 out of 5 shiny bald heads. And happy Halloween.
There's great performances all around. The way that the story and the mythology of Mr. Boogie kind of unfolds is really well paced. It's very Carpenter-esque, which I really admire, especially in the way it uses music to enhance the experience, and in its coloring and the way that it's framed and the way it's shot. And most importantly, it prioritizes making a good film over just being a horror movie. And I would give Sinister 4 out of 5 shiny bald heads. Last time on the couch, we reviewed John Wick 3, so if you missed it, now's a great time to check it out. If you enjoy what we're doing, please hit that like button and subscribe. To receive alerts when new videos are posted, don't forget to click the bell icon. Thanks for joining us on the couch.